Hey, thank you all for showing up. Appreciate it. And today we're going to be talking about a team approach to lobbying legislators. And it is a non-confrontational team approach. And this is the same approach that is used by the FCNL, the Friends Committee on National Legislation, the Quakers. So it is definitely non-confrontational. So the benefits of a team approach: you have shared responsibilities, mutual support. You get to prepare together and you can brainstorm questions and answers and what ifs, discuss what's going to happen if this happens, or that happens, or this issue is brought up. And you have built-in backup if there is something really important that needed to be said or done, and you were supposed to do it and you forget, somebody at the meeting is on your side and will be there. So this is the advocacy team roles. And by the way, I will be sending out Ruth will be sending out a copy of this presentation with the notes and the several handouts that I'll be talking about during the course of the presentation. So advocacy team roles, there are 5 roles, basically. And an advocacy team should be 3 to 5 people. If there's 3 people, clearly you're doubling up on some roles. And if there's 5, you're still going to double up on roles because a couple of the roles are for everyone. The captain is the person that is in charge of this meeting. He or she is the MC for the meeting. All right. Very important to understand that if you are a captain for this meeting, doesn't mean you have to be the captain for every meeting of this group of your team that might be meeting with the legislator down the road. That role can shift. All these roles can shift. So if you're the captain one time, you can have another role another time. The scheduler, very important person. The scheduler is the sole point of contact for this meeting with the legislator's office. You don't want 2 or 3 people contacting the legislator about this meeting. Note taker. A note taker is a person who, well, guess what they do? They take notes during the meeting. And it's very important to have one person dedicated to taking notes at the meeting. This person doesn't necessarily have a speaking role. In fact, it's probably better if he or she doesn't, because it's hard to take notes while you're also engaged in a conversation with the legislator. 1 to 3 team members will be telling a story. We call it the "what brought me here" story, and there'll be more on that later. And then all of the team members are researchers, doing research on the legislator, trying to find things that make you similar to rather than different from the legislator. All right, the first steps in putting a team together is you have 3 to 5 people who want to meet with a legislator or are interested in doing this. You form the team and you have a meeting. And this meeting it can be a Zoom meeting, you can meet it together and use the lobby visit roadmap. That is one of the handouts that you should have received before this session, but will definitely be receiving after it. The lobby visit roadmap allows you to plan the meeting. So you get 3 to 5 people who want to meet with the legislator, have a meeting, use the lobby visit roadmap to plan the meeting. Once you have the roles figured out, then the scheduler contacts the office, the legislative office, and you can meet in Harrisburg if it's convenient for you, or for the vast majority of us, it's easier to meet in a local office. So the scheduler contacts the office for the date, place, and time of a meeting and the length of the meeting. Most meetings, it's been my experience, take 4 to 6 weeks from the time a request is made to the date of the meeting. So meetings requested now are going to be probably occur end of March, early April. So you put the team together, you have a scheduler, the scheduler contacts the office for the date, time, and place of the meeting and the duration of the meeting. And then perhaps the note taker creates a meeting file, but somebody on the team should have a meeting file on a computer, and you preserve the meeting documents. And this is very helpful because there's going to be several meetings with the legislator during the course of this session. You're not going to have just one meeting and be done. The team members can change. Certainly the team roles will change. But we anticipate, 2 or 3 meetings during the course of the session. As the legislation progresses through different points, we'll want to talk to legislators and ask them to, support it when it's in a state government committee. If it gets out of the state government committee, support it when it's on the floor for a vote. And if it passes that chamber, we want to have meetings with the other chamber to discuss it there. So you don't want to be starting from scratch every time. And if you keep a meeting file, you'll have all the documents related to the meeting in there, and you'll have your report on what the legislator said, and it'll just be easy to access and get up to speed. And all the members conduct research on the legislator. Again, you're looking for things that make you similar to rather than different from the legislator. We also want to know the legislator's position on our legislation. And we want to be looking for something to thank the legislator for, something the legislator has said or done or supported that we can genuinely thank them for doing that. All right. Now, before the meeting, you have the roles. When you're having the meeting, you're putting it together. You have a meeting script. Actually work it out. Who's going to say what, when? You have the what brought me here stories. You create the ask. And again, the lobby visit roadmap is a very helpful aid in putting all of this together. And then you have a debriefing agenda. Another of the templates, handouts that you've been provided, and we'll get another copy soon, is a debriefing agenda and also the ask contact sheet. So you prepare your what brought me here story. And what brought me here story is really the heart of the meeting, and it frames the issue through personal experience. It identifies values. And the reason we identify values and use values is because you can argue with opinions. And today, unfortunately, you can even argue facts. But you can't really argue values. I mean, integrity, trust, honesty, courage, kindness, acceptance, love, freedom, those are human values. Now, we may have different paths to those values, but the values themselves are common to us all. So if you're framing your argument using your values, you can't get a pushback from it. It relates the issues to your values, and because they're human values, it connects with the legislator and staff. So when you're developing your what brought me here stories, and by the way, the what brought me here story is a very brief story. It is one paragraph, 3 or 4 sentences, and it's, what brings you to this work? When and how did you become aware of the issue? Why is it important to you? What brought me here story, these are some questions you can ask, this is the frame of it. When I was, something happened, and you learned, you realized, and that's why this is important to you. I'll give you an example of my what brought me here story. In 1968, I was a 19-year-old combat infantryman in South Vietnam, and I saw young men die for this country. And while I cannot tell you what each of them thought that sacrifice was for, I can guarantee you that not one of them died so that politicians could draw districts that were safe for themselves or their party. That's it. And I'm telling you, that is maybe 70 words. It's 2, 3 sentences. It's less than a minute. And it's values-based. And so it just tells the legislator why the issue is important to you. And it puts the meeting on a different footing. You're not arguing facts. You're not arguing you should do this, you should do that. You're expressing a value that the legislator can identify with. So I think the what brought me here story should be written out because, believe me, that story I just told started out a bit longer than it is. And if you write it out, you can edit it down to the nub. You can omit all unnecessary words, or I should have said you could omit unnecessary words. You want to share the story with the team, get feedback from the team. Did the story make sense? Was it values-based? Did I raise any questions that weren't answered? And as you're preparing your what brought me here story and the meeting, preparing for the meeting, you want to prepare for what if. You already know how long the meeting is supposed to be. Typically, they're 15 minutes or a half an hour. Right, so you have a half-hour meeting scheduled. The office has said you have a half hour. You arrive at the meeting and something's happened, something's changed, and it's only 15 minutes. Well, what are you going to do if that happens? You plan beforehand. If we only have time for 2 stories, these are the 2 we're going to tell. If you only have time for 1 story, this is the 1 story you're going to tell. So you get to the office and something like that happens. You don't have as much time. You're ready. You're prepared. You just smile and say, okay, fine. We're happy to meet the legislator or the office staff. And oh, by the way, meeting with office staff is perfectly fine. Don't be disappointed if you're talking to the office staff. The legislator is pulled in lots of different directions and relies on the office staff to bring information to them. So be good to the office staff. Don't be disappointed. Don't treat them as second-class citizens. Don't let them know you're disappointed in not meeting the legislator. Treat them with respect and give them the good information, and it'll pay off. So lobbying. Lobbying is a little bit more nuanced than a lot of people realize. It isn't an on-off switch. And I'll talk more about that later. And you can have somebody who is a leader against. I mean, they're just vehemently opposed to what we're doing, and they're working against us. And we're going to be meeting with those people. Then you have somebody who just kind of is against us, but they're not out there working hard against us. Then you have, and this is, I think, the largest category of legislators, they're neutral or undecided. It is shocking to me how many legislators don't have a good handle on the redistricting process, or I should say the 2 redistricting processes in Pennsylvania, and are not sure about what's going on. They think that they get a big say in what the maps are, and they actually don't. So that's the largest category. Then you have the legislators, they co-sponsored it, but they aren't really involved, haven't put it in their newsletter, and they haven't made any statements about it or tweeted about it. So, and then you have the leader who is for it, like the primes we have on our legislation. They're actively working for this, and they're for it, and they don't care who knows about it. So those are the ranges. And when you're talking to that range of people, lobbying is not an on-off switch. And you're not going to go into someone who is vehemently opposed to what we want to do. And by the dint of our arguments, and just because we're right, have a 20, 30-minute conversation with the legislator, and he or she is going to say, well, by golly, my eyes have been opened up, and I'm going to support your legislation now. That is not going to happen. We want incremental improvement. We want any movement toward our position is a win. And when we're talking to somebody, even when we're talking to somebody who's vehemently opposed when you go in, and they're still vehemently opposed when you go out, they will have heard us. They will know that we're out there working on this. So it's important that they know that there are constituents who care about this issue, and they have to pay attention. So lobbying is not an on-off switch. Any movement toward our position is a win. So if you can take someone who is vehemently opposed to us to say that there's a portion of the bill that they like, or if the bill had this change, they might be able to support it. That's a win. You take somebody who is against us but isn't very active, if you can get them to agree that there's portions of the bill that they like, or if certain aspects were changed, they could support it, that's a win. And if you get somebody who, you get those undecided and neutral and really unfamiliar with the issue, you educate them and you let them know about the process, what's wrong with the process, and how you think it needs to be changed, and why you think it needs to be changed. And you kind of, you do open their eyes, because they haven't been told what's going on. The information they're getting from their leadership, believe me, is not the same information we are handing them. So that is helpful. And then someone who is forced, if you can get them to be a little more strident in their support, to contact their party leaders about, or contact the chair of the state government committee in their chamber and ask for a hearing and a vote on our bill. That's a win. And then, of course, when you're talking to the people that are strong supporters, what can we do to help move this forward? Who should we be talking to? Is there a Republican legislator that you think is persuadable and we should be talking to? Are there Democrats that are maybe a bit reluctant and we should be talking to and should be persuadable? How can we help you get this forward? So you have a different type of message for each type of legislator. And of course, you've done research on the legislator and you've determined whether they are strongly opposed, just merely against, or unfamiliar, or mildly for, or stridently for. So before the meeting, you prepare the ask. And again, there is a contact sheet ask template in the material you'll be receiving. And the ask is simply a clear statement of what you want the legislator to do. And it's related to the legislation status. Currently, in the House, House Bill 31, and in the Senate, Senate Bill 131, to create constitutional amendments to create an independent redistricting commission. The co-sponsorship memos are circulating. The text of the bill is not ready yet. It has to come out of the legislative part of the legislature that actually prints the bills and everything, and it hasn't emerged from that yet. And we hope it emerges during March, probably toward the end. But until the bill is out, it's just the co-sponsorship memo circulating. Now, many legislators are going to tell you, gee, interesting, thanks for bringing it to my attention, but I can't co-sponsor something until I'm able to read the legislation, which sounds reasonable to me. I don't have a problem with that. So we don't want to be going out tugging on their coats to sign the legislation, and maybe we don't need a meeting with them right now. But we do want to bring the issue to their attention. So maybe this is the time for a postcard or a phone call to the legislator, letting them know that the bill is available for co-sponsorship and asking them to contact this prime sponsors. That's Representative Samuelson, the Democrat in the House, and Representative Gillen, the Republican in the House, and Senator, his name just left my head. I'll have to get back to that. Senator Kearney in the Senate. Contact them, see if they can get more information on the bill. It's related to the legislator's position. Now, again, co-sponsorship memos are circulating now. What's going to happen when the bill is available, the text of the bill they'll be able to read the text of the bill. So you want to contact them, ask them to read the bill. You want to, the bill will likely be submitted to the state government committee in the House and the state government committee in the Senate. And isn't an absolute certainty until it happens. It hasn't happened, but that's where this type of legislation has gone in the past, and that's where it should go. So once it's referred to a committee, you want to ask the legislators who are not on the committee to contact the committee chair of their party and to advocate for the bill, to get the bill a hearing and a vote. If your legislator is on the state government committee, you want them to advocate for a hearing and a vote. And then the ask is part of the leave behind document. You leave the contact sheet and ask with the legislator. And but okay, so once the bill is in state government committee, say it gets voted on, it's out of committee, now you want to have it on the floor. You have it on the floor of the chamber, and you want to have a hearing and a vote on the floor of the chamber. And then when it passes one chamber, you want to have a hearing and a vote in the state government committee in the other chamber, a hearing and a vote on the floor of the other chamber. So the ask changes based on the status of the legislation. So before your meeting, you want to rehearse. You want to brainstorm questions and answers. And you will have researched the legislator, and there are reports from past meetings with many legislators, and you can look at those. and you want to practice. You want to practice your what brought me here story, you want to practice the ask, and you want to review the meeting. Okay, so the date of the meeting, you want to arrive early. You gather outside the offices, you go in all together, you do some last minute planning, go over things. The captain thanks the legislator for something, something he or she has said or done or supported. And there are difficult legislators for whom it's difficult for us to find legitimately anything that we can actually thank them for. I think that's a rarity, but it does happen. In that case, you thank them for their time. And you say, isn't it wonderful we live in a country where constituents can meet with their lawmakers? Beginning of the meeting, the captain confirms the length of time of the meeting. And again, because you've already discussed this, if the legislator says, I'm sorry, I have something coming up I have to get to, I only can give you 15 minutes, you already know which what brought me here story is going to be told and which have to be cut. Captain introduces the team members. The note taker presents the contact ask sheet to the legislator. Again, this is one of the templates that you'll be receiving, and it simply is the contact information for all the team members at the meeting. You want to confirm their name, their address, so that they're they can confirm that they're constituents, and then an email address would be fine. Doesn't have to be a phone number. And then also on that one page is the ask. We're asking you to please read and co-sponsor House Bill 31, Senate Bill 131, whichever it is. And you give that to the legislator. Now, I personally think that this document, the contact and ask sheet, should be prepared ahead of time and sent to the legislator's office 2 or 3 days in advance. And if you do that, it's sort of, they get to look at that meeting, they get to Google all of you and see who you are and what you've done. They get to see the ask and prepare their response. We don't want to ambush anybody. We want to have a conversation, so we want them to be prepared for what we're going to ask them. We'll get much better information that way. And it also just changes the tone of the meeting. They can relax. They know they're not going to get ambushed about something, and they know who's going to be there and how it's going to be. So that is just worth doing. The caveat is you got to bring a copy of the contact ask sheet to the legislator, because even if you do send it to the office, there's no guarantee that the legislator or the staff member you'll be meeting with has seen it. It may have gotten to the office, been printed, and is on somebody's desk. So always bring a copy of it to the meeting to hand to the legislator. So the captain states the ask and then transitions to the what brought me here story. The captain will say, this is what we're asking you for. And Bill here has something he would like to say about that. And Bill tells his story. And when Bill's done, he says, and that's why this is important to me. And I believe Amy has something she would like to say about this. And Amy tells her story. And then when Amy's completed, she says, and Loretta has something she would like to say about this issue. Loretta tells her story and says, that's why it's important to me, and turns the meeting back over to the captain, who repeats the ask and says, and now you've heard some reasons why this issue is so important to us. We'd like to have your reaction to that. And then everybody gets very comfortable with silence. Very comfortable with silence. Because you want the legislator or the staff member to be able to collect their thoughts and respond. So give them a chance, and you want to hear what they have to say. Team listens carefully to the response. This is where the note taker has to be on their toes, at the ready, and taking down what the legislator or the staff member is saying. This is why we're having the meeting, to get this reaction. This is the important information we want from the meeting. So what happens at the meeting then? It really just, every meeting I've been into, the same thing happens. Once you do the what brought me here stories and you wait for the response from the legislator, it then becomes just a conversation. And the captain will moderate the response and say, okay, if there's a question raised, because you guys have talked about this beforehand, the captain will say, well, Bill's going to handle that question. Bill, what do you think? And Bill responds to an issue that he is prepared for. So you moderate the response, you repeat the ask. The captain needs to be aware of the time. So 5 minutes before the meeting end, the captain repeats the ask. If there are leave behind documents, we have that 2-page summary of the bill. We have that bill that summarizes the existing process and compares it to how the process would be once our legislation is enacted. Those are good leave behind documents. There may be others that you develop for a specific legislator. So you hand those over, you leave them behind, you discuss follow-up. We understand that you had a question about this aspect of the bill, and we will get that information to you in 2 or 3 days. And you thank the legislator, and then you take a photo if you're at an in-person meeting, or a screenshot of the group if you're on a Zoom meeting, and then you leave the building in silence. Okay, you really do need to leave the building in silence. You don't want, if you're talking to someone who's difficult and you have a team member, muttering under their breath after they're leaving, well, that was a waste of time. And one of the staff members hears that, you will have undone all the goodwill that you had because of your professional approach and your demeanor during the meeting. So leave in silence, gather at a place where you can review the meeting, what worked, what didn't work. Use the debriefing document. Again, that's one of the handouts you'll be sent and have received, I believe. List all the unanswered questions and decide, who has to answer that? What's the best source of that information? Talk about what worked, what you'd like to improve. So after the meeting, there are things to do. You have the debriefing report, very simple document. It's an online document that is filled out, but who does it and when they're going to do it? Is your team going to write a press release about the meeting? Some do. It might be something newsworthy you want to do like that. You're going to have a letter to the editor praising the legislator or calling the legislator out for their position. Is there going to be a social media post? You have that picture you took. Be nice to have a social media post. Who's going to do that? When they're going to do that? You discuss that during the debriefing. A thank you note. Of course, the note taker is going to send an email thank you shortly after the meeting, and that's nice. But I also think it's nice if somebody on the team just sends a postcard thanking the legislator or the staff member for the meeting and really appreciating the time and the interest they took in the question. And you're also going to talk about the responses to the questions. Who's going to get the information for the response? Who in fair districts do we have to talk to get that information? Settle all those things. So this is the 10 steps to success. You form the teams. Get 3 to 5 people who want to meet with a legislator. Then you have one meeting and you define the roles. And then you schedule the actual meeting with the legislator. And between the time of the scheduled meeting with the legislator, you have another meeting and you work out the meeting. You're doing research on the legislator and you prepare the what brought me here stories and you prepare the ask. You have a rehearsal session. Then you have the meeting. Then you have the debriefing and the meeting document file. And then eventually you're going to repeat. Maybe not with the same group of people. If you have 3 to 5 people, maybe only 3 can come next time and a couple of new people join you. So the constituent members at the meeting may change, and certainly the roles should change. All right, so you have a meeting. What are you going to be saying? Well, you want to remain positive, factual, respectful, and persistent. And Fair Districts provides a lot of good information. Please check the website out for the latest talking points before you go see that. And check with advocacy advisors or reach out to Fair Districts leadership and ask questions about what you should be saying. What's the most important thing to be saying at this time? Our 25-26 session goal is to pass constitutional amendment creating an independent redistricting commission. So what do we mean by an independent redistricting commission? Well, it's a three-legged stool. It's independent, transparent, and it's prioritized mapping criteria. So by independent, we want an independent redistricting commission that is representative of the Commonwealth's diversity and free from legislative influence in the selection of the commission and in the operation of the commission. We want a transparent public process that includes public hearings, sharing of information about redistricting proposals, and equal access to all data and information for both the public and the commissioners. If the commissioners are using information to draw the maps, we want the public to have access to that same information. And we want prioritized mapping standards that are clear, measurable, and promote equitable representation for counties, municipalities, and communities of interest, with defined limits on population deviation and attention to compactness, contiguity, and geographic boundaries. That's what we mean by an independent redistricting commission. So we are here and we are staying here because, and this is important, a lot of people, including legislators, think, well, the maps are the maps now, and that's it. And what's the big deal? We're not doing redistricting to 2031. Why are you bothering us? Well, we're bothering you because the process that created Goofy Kicking Donald, this was the poster child for gerrymandered congressional districts from the 2011 redistricting cycle. These were among the maps that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decided were unconstitutional. That map, the process that created that map remains. The process hadn't changed. To fix the problem and avoid this kind of map in the future, we have to fix the process. And the fix is an independent redistricting commission. This is also helpful messaging when you're talking. Maps drawn by Democrats will favor Democrats. Maps drawn by Republicans will favor Republicans. Maps drawn by citizens will favor citizens, and those are the maps we want. And when you're advocating, one of the things that isn't terribly effective advocating is advocating from your own point of view. I want this because this is important to me, blah, blah, blah. You should do this because this is what I like. What is more effective is what's in it for them. Why should they do this? How will this benefit the legislator? So ask them, what happens to you? What happens to your party if the other party controls the process? Aren't nonpartisan maps in their best interest? Because I'm going to talk about this just a little bit more. Nobody knows who is going to be the governor in 2031, the next redistricting cycle, who's going to have control of the House or the Senate in 2031, or you don't know who's going to have the majority on the Supreme Court. All of those pieces are involved in redistricting. And if one party has all of those pieces, they can gerrymander to their heart's content. There's nothing that can stop them. So we don't know who's going to be in control, but what happens if it's the other guys? What's going to happen to you? What's going to happen to your party? Safest bet, independent redistricting. Okay, being nonpartisan, you're going to get some pushback from legislators that Fair Districts PA is not nonpartisan. I reject that. We are political. Definitely, we are political, and because we're political, we support things that one party or the other may not like. Well, that's fine. It doesn't make us partisan. One of the problems we have in our country today is if you are for this position, then that means you have signed, and that position happens to be a little bit to the right of the rest of the country. Well, then you're a little bit to the right on every issue. Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. I know in my heart, I am not partisan. I also know in my heart that I trend a little bit to the left. Fine. But on some issues, I trend a little bit to the right. It depends on the issue. So we are not partisan. We are political. Taking political stands offends some party leaders. Fine. I reject a politician, a hyper-partisan politician, telling me that I am not impartial. They have no standing with me when it comes to that. And you're going to get the biggest pushback on whether or not fair districts is nonpartisan from hyper-partisan politicians. And the quickest answer back say, well, I'm not partisan on this issue. I promote redistricting reform. I promote an independent redistricting commission. And this seems to upset Republican leadership and Democratic leadership. So I think we're doing something right. And the biggest point is we are for voters, not politicians. We are advocating on behalf of voters, not politicians. So that is the presentation. Does anybody have any? Oh, I got questions in the chat here.